Hey, Anton.
Yeah, Margaret?
You know what people don't talk about enough?
What?
All the families trying to keep up appearances at Family Day. Welcome to People Don't Talk About Young Royals. I'm Margaret. My pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Anton. My pronouns are he, they.
And we're people here to discuss the show our friends are sick of hearing us talk about.
If that sounds like you, stick around. If your friends sent you this podcast out of a desperate attempt to get you to watch Young Royals, take this as a sign.
Go watch Young Royals, then come back to this podcast.
Margaret, what are we talking about today?
Today we will be having a thematic discussion of Season 1, Episode 3, narrowing in specifically on what Young Royals says about the upper class, the monarchy, and Wilhelm's place within the royal family.
Woohoo! In this discussion, we won't be summarizing the plot of the episode because we already did that. If you need or want a refresher, head back 11 episodes in our feed to our most recent This Week at Alershka for a full breakdown. This episode discussion will likely be all over the place, so strap in. You have been warned.
Okay, so, starting with the cold open.
Yeah.
All of the families trying to keep it together.
Yeah.
You know, first we have August and his money issue situation with his mother and everything that happens there, where he does have, we talked about this in his character episode a lot, but he has options that he's choosing not to take. And then we have Felice's, like trying to keep up appearances with her parents, both at the lunch and when Felice is with her mother in Felice's room. Specifically when she's talking about Wilhelm. And then, I mean, Wilhelm is also trying to keep up appearances of the royal family at lunch. It's the whole reason why he goes.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got? I think that's all that's coming to mind right now. Did I miss anything?
Okay. No, that sounds about right. My thought that I have written down that's like closest to that is really when I think of this episode, I think of the way that Parents' Day. I don't know if this is exactly the right way to put it, but it's kind of what I thought of at the time. Is like it blows the world out in the sense that like it like expands and enriches not just our core five. Especially Felice and August, but like the entire world of Alershka gets a lot deeper and you understand everything a lot more in the way that everyone, even just in like side dialogue that you can barely hear and like really you only pick up in the subtitles a lot of the time, like all of that goes to create a much deeper and richer version of the world than we had in the first two episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, and this is something that, like, I mean, because of this episode, I think this is an episode that, like, I think you can take for granted how much depth of the world we get from this episode and kind of this episode alone in a lot of ways. Like, it sets a precedent for sure, but, like, in terms of, like, seeing everybody's parents and like seeing everybody like in context, you especially for like a boarding school like teen drama, like you rarely ever get is like everybody. I mean on the one hand it's kind of a stock episode, like the episode where everyone's parents arrive, but also like getting that so soon after meeting these characters, it, like establishes that like these kids' relationship to their families is like a really important part of the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Which like granted is like established with Wilhelm in the very first episode. Like that. I mean, that's Wilhelm's whole thing that was set up as being like his relationship to his family and like how his family has reacted to him, etc.
Yeah.
But I think, that pressure to keep up appearances that you pointed out, and what I call the pressure of legacy, is really present. I'm just deciding if I want to go. Like, I wrote down my notes in like chronological order of the episode, but it's like this is a themes episode. I guess it is a little bit more vibe, so I'll just jump to the bottom of my doc. Like, I locked in on the pressure of legacy when I was suddenly had this realization. I mean, we've skirted near it before, but like I feel like I've never directly said it this way. Like, Felice's trauma and August's trauma do, even though it goes unspoken between them, and they neither of them really recognize it in the other. That pressure of legacy, either external of Felice from her parents, which then she externalizes, and then August that like is externalized from some source that that never really gets defined, but like both of them have this pressure to maintain the family line, to like be responsible for their family's continued success in this very insular world of the Swedish upper classes. And it's like, I would say it's the trauma that pushes them together, by making them see each other as a valuable and or at least viable option to accomplish this goal. I say viable because August is not Felice's first choice.
Rip.
Just spitting facts.
God damn.
But like Felice clearly is August's first choice, which might set up an interesting dynamic going forward. But
Rip.
But I wanted to add like a caveat. Although I think we mentioned this before. Although we both do think that like August's attraction to Felice is real, he also is the person who told us that Felice is modern nobility. Like,
yeah.
Like, we're not gonna completely ignore the fact that like Felice's status probably makes her more attractive to August than she might otherwise be, because in the world of Halerska, the world of the Swedish upper classes, like being with her accomplishes a lot that like on his imaginary checklist. Like, and like, I know I've mentioned this before in previous privilege punishments, but like it's worth noting, especially in the upper classes, when you have a community this small, I would say a vast majority of current couples at Halerska are probably going to eventually go on to be married to each other.
Yeah. Also, going back for a second, in the pilot, all August says is, I'm going to marry her and she's modern nobility. And we already know he's a dick, so it's not a far cry to say he's also shallow.
Right. Fair.
This isn't an August character episode, but I will take any opportunity to slander him.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's slander, if it's true, though.
And I'm pretty sure we already slandered him thoroughly for this, but like the fact that he doesn't mention a single personality trait.
No.
Because frankly, again, I think we've definitely mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again because people don't talk about it enough. Felice has been at Halerska for a month. August would have known her for a month. And he's only gotten to know her up to the point that she gets annoyed every time she sees him.
You know those creepy seniors in high school that date freshmen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had to say.
Yep. Yeah. Again, something people don't talk about enough because we hate on August for enough things, but like...
Yeah.
And like, in a school system where like everyone is only like 2-3 years removed from each other, you'd think that wouldn't be a huge thing, but like early high school for me and late high school,
so different.
I am two different people.
So different. It's two completely different. Also, how
August is 18. That's confirmed at some point and
Yeah,
Felice
it
16.
is. Yeah. Ickier.
Yeah, I'm forgetting when that's confirmed, but I know he is. So
Yeah.
that's not. It's maybe a spoiler because we probably haven't mentioned in dialogue.
Yeah, we should probably
you can
cut that entire part out, honestly. But
no. Oh gosh, like I mean, I think you can presume from the fact that he's a third year,
Yeah.
and like just looking at the Swedish education system,
yeah,
icky. But something I wanted to kind of push further on with that pressure of legacy is that Simon is trying to make something of his life while the boarders are all trying not to fuck up what they've already been given.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a distinguishing feature of his relationship to Hilershka that is, I think, really present in this episode in a way that we haven't really appreciated, at least in these terms. Like, we talked extensively throughout this cycle talked extensively about Simon's second deal with August and like the ramifications of it and like the ways he is really messy in this episode. For good reason, but it also in ways that like are just very clearly the act of someone lashing out because they feel cornered.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another thing that is like pitting August and Simon against each other, is Simon's sense of like what I need to do to secure my future, and August's like completely almost opposite, or at least like completely like different goals of like, I need to make sure my family endures.
Yeah.
In the way that we always have, and like maintain the status we already have, and I was born into.
Yeah.
Which like, it's like, I mean, it's this inherently like progressive motivation and this inherently conservative motivation in a way, in the sense that like August and like pretty much everyone at Hilershka is in some way interested in preserving the status quo.
Yeah.
Because the status quo is what's keeping them in the positions that their families were born into, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But like Simon, in an attempt to be upwardly mobile in a capitalist society, like, it's not like he's fighting against the people of Hilershka literally, but they do have contrary goals to one another.
Yeah.
In a way that is definitely not, that definitely probably goes quite unspoken, but I think is underlying a lot of the interactions that Simon seems to have had with Hilershka students.
Yeah.
Like, specifically the, like, we all know who the biggest welfare receivers are, et cetera, et cetera. Like, the gunning he goes at them for in class is, like, someone who knows that he is clawing his way up. And, like, I think in a way that is justified, at least to some extent, harbors resentment for people who were born at the top already.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Sarah, the way I identify pressure of legacy playing into her story, when I was just thinking this through, like, all the characters I could think of, like, she is trying to be in this world without any of the deep awareness of the pressure of legacy that, like, is pervading the space, but no one needs to talk about because everyone understands.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's what led to her oopsie, her faux pas, her mistake with Felice's parents, is not understanding from the very little information that Felice gave her what the stakes were and like what Felice's expectations on Felice are in the specific instance of like of horseback riding.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thing that like so many people at Hilershka, like especially probably a lot of the girls, probably like take for granted and like will just know without saying anything, like, oh yeah, your mom is gonna want you to basically be a mini version of her.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's just kind of in a lot of ways probably a given to some extent. Like Felice's mom might be kind of in the extreme category of that. But we also don't have any way of knowing that. Like almost everybody might have like as extreme a mom as Misun, but like Felice just might have gotten especially good at like being popular and shit. So, but in any event, like Sarah does not know anything about any of that, as mentioned in her character episode,
right?
And like that is the thing that causes that mistake. And in a way this is also possibly what Villa is dealing with currently, like trying to conceptualize himself as a queer person. This you have to really I think have to stretch between the lines, but I do want to like at least present it as a thing, because it's like the connection between I definitely have probably brought this up before. I mean, I definitely have. I know that for a fact. But like the connection between like class and sexuality is, I mean, it's the whole reason why I love young royals so much. In a lot of ways, and like it is like trying to understand who he can be for his family if he is this other thing that he's never heard about existing before,
right?
At least in Sweden. But even then also, like, I mean, information on legitimately confirmed, like, and especially out queer heads of state, like royalty wise, is hard to come by. So like I not being able to even fathom that being a thing,
right,
makes a lot of sense. If more than basically any other type of family, a royal family is kind of legitimized on every single person in the family being straight.
Yeah.
Like, or at least have opposite sex attraction, which we don't know that Wilhelm doesn't have.
Right.
But like these first feelings he's experiencing are not for who he's supposed to be experiencing them for.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we do, as mentioned in previous episodes, like we start him on this journey of like he's starting to find an equilibrium. Like he's starting to approach a place where, like, granted he is keeping it a secret from everybody, and like he is nowhere near in a place to be like out and proud, but like he's achieving internal acceptance, as we've talked about in Revolution, remarkably quickly given the circumstances.
For sure.
Like his feelings are strong enough that like he just cannot like stuff them away for too long. And like we see a way forward as he's like heading to Simon's house, like a way forward on his journey that like is nowhere near, like he's not even in the middle of that journey, but like he's started forward finally. And then the pressure of legacy increases a million times over and just swats him down.
Yeah. Yeah. Holy shit.
Because like you like just let us imagine for a moment you're achieving the beginning stages of like understanding that like this is my life, and like I'm experiencing joy and I don't want to let go of that.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that part of the reason why he was able to accept that honestly pretty quickly is because he's not technically the heir. So like, does it really matter who he ends up with? It's not like he has to carry on the royal family until the last 30 seconds of the episode. Yeah,
because doesn't he talk to Erik in this episode something?
Yeah, like nobody cares what I do. Or they only care because you're the heir or whatever. The crown prince.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's part of that conversation that like, again, should have been it's like when I say that there are so many death flags on Erik, we're not even kidding. Like we had to jump around discussing so many of them because we didn't want to spoil the end of episode 3.
Yeah.
In the way that we do our episodes, of trying to treat each episode as like an adding to the puzzle. But like yeah.
There's a lot of cutting out that Anton had to do of my dialogue.
Like the times that Margaret unthinkingly would be like Crown Prince Wilhelm, because anyone who knows young royals will just call him the Crown Prince casually, because for so much of the story he is. Yeah, but tell me if you can follow this. But like, again, I just woke up when I wrote this, because like I was like on something and I was just like, I want to write this. Is that a personal tragedy becomes a national tragedy, becomes a personal tragedy again?
No, I agree.
Because
I wholeheartedly agree.
Because Villa's brother dies.
Right.
Who is the Crown Prince of Sweden, so the entire country is in mourning.
Right.
And then this causes more deeply personal issues for Wilhelm beyond just simple grief that his brother has died.
Yeah.
Because it, in a real way, in a way that, like, I don't think the fandom appreciate. I mean, they do appreciate it, but, like, they don't. I think we should appreciate it more. Is he, in a real way, he is grieving his brother and the life he could have had.
Yeah.
If he was just the spare.
Yeah.
Everything would be easier if he had stayed the spare the rest of his life.
Oh, can you imagine? The rest of the show would have been happy, mostly, probably. Happier, at least.
I've been dancing around whether or not I wanted to do this.
Do it.
But this is in no way meant to be like a direct call out, but like I made the comparison, and a lot of people have too. What the show would be if Wilhelm stayed the spare the rest of his life, it would be red, white, and royal blue.
You're right. And you should say it.
And this is what I mean when I say the end of this episode is the writers, like, being bold. Writers, Lisa, being like, yeah.
Call her out by name.
It's like, it's an understandable move to have your queer have your queer prince character be the spare.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to deal with what this show ends up being about.
Yeah.
Meaningfully. Like, you don't have to deal with the legitimate state of the monarchy as they know it. Like, you don't have to delve completely into the institution and consider whether or not it can even continue like this. Because it turns a story that's just about acceptance from your family to acceptance within an institution that, like, would need to fundamentally change in order to accommodate you.
Yeah, for sure. And as bold as the move was, it had to happen.
Oh, yeah.
It had to happen.
Oh, yeah.
There's, like...
This show, I would hate to live in a world where it didn't happen. Honestly, sorry, Erik. But like, but like, Young Royals without Erik's death is plain mediocre. I'm gonna say it, and I don't. Sorry, I lost Margaret for a second.
Just the way you said "sorry, Erik," I wasn't expecting it.
Should that be the title of this episode?
Sorry, Erik. I think so.
Sorry. Like, I guess it's not just, I mean, it's either that or the pressure of legacy. That's a bit dramatic, but...
I like Sorry, Erik. It was so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, I mean, a lot of Privileged Punishment episodes have just been named after one-off jokes, because the first one was Queen Derogatory, so...
That was so good.
Thank you.
We're forever going to be chasing that title high.
Yeah. But yeah, so, sorry, but like, yeah, sorry, Erik. And like, I don't mean to be coming for the tens of thousands of fan fictions likely that like involve AU where Erik doesn't die, because I understand the impulse.
I'll figure it out. Hang on.
But it's like, I stand by, and I will forever stand by, that the show isn't as good if you don't make Wilhelm Crown Prince.
Yeah, I agree. It loses some of the, like, tragedy.
And also, I mean, the show is entirely different this way, but, like, consider a world where he starts off as Crown Prince.
Oh, I don't think it would have happened. Like,
Exactly.
the show.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, because there's no way, given that lifelong pressure, that especially a character like Wilhelm, if he remains the same person, was born Crown Prince, like, there's no way that he even considers Simon as an option.
Yeah.
You'd rather a show is infinitely more toxic.
That would be... I have long said I am waiting for the day where we have enough queer representation that we become okay with toxic representation again, because...
I mean, some people are still making it.
Yeah, but that's different.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm saying, like, once we have enough where we're not, like, grasping at straws for every representation, and, like, we can make just trashy rep again. Like,
yeah.
Trashy for the sake of trashy. I'm waiting for that day.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, like, we're appreciating, I think, where the like conversation around queer media representation has landed, and I think it's a place that, like, it's been a long time coming of finding it, of like, there are so many queer stories.
Mm-hmm.
Just make more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And more means different ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just as many as possible, as different as possible.
I think we're finally getting there.
We're getting there, and, like, past me really thought we wouldn't get here within.
Oh yeah.
As quickly as we did. Like, we are not perfect by any means. Like,
no.
I would fucking kill to have a, like, plausibly bisexual character in Young Royals.
Yeah.
But, like, this is the first time everyone's told this type of story, so
Mm-hmm.
we're still breaking ground, and we just need more.
Yeah, we do.
That was our little representation tangent. That I feel like we sometimes go on theme episodes.
I just can't wait until we can have bad representation and have it not be our only option.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, like, problematic. I'm just saying trashy.
Yeah. So I think
Let's get
we've
back to the
talked about
episode.
Erik enough, and, like, I'm glad actually that we did do this, and those were the end of my notes, but we put them before basically everything else, so then we can bury it in the middle of the episode, so we don't have to end on it this time.
Nice.
I mean, the one little note I have that basically relates to everything we were already talking about is that, like, the piano scene is a moment where exactly what I'm talking about, like, it's what we've been talking about happens, is like the heteronormativity of Wilhelm's royal position, and, like, the class expectations just, like, hit him in a wave and, like, decide his actions for, like, the first 10 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. But I think like, as mentioned before, like, Parents' Day blows the world out. It gives us Felice's trauma. It dives deeper into August's trauma. And, like, an example of what I was talking about before, of, like, just little asides, is that moment where, like, Henry and Walter are chatting in the dining room, and they're talking about how, like, is it like, oh, I think our parents know each other?
Yeah.
Or something
It's like,
like
yeah, my
that.
dad recognized your dad. Or something along those lines.
Yeah. Just something along those, I think that almost might literally be the line. It's like those little things that are, like, it just makes all these characters, like, even people we, like, do not know the name of, see in, like, a lot of group shots, but, like, we'll never know their stories. Like, we get a sense that all of them are people living their own lives. We're just not following them, and that's fine. And like, I think, however, like just beyond like the character work that Parents' Day does, I was thinking about when I was like actually thinking about this episode in relation to class. I had this kind of realization where the luncheon is the first instance where Hilershka, as an institution, is explicitly discriminatory and classist.
Yeah, but say more.
So, like, there have been numerous other things that, like, by the way that it's set up, it is prohibitive, specifically, like the way they do extra credit and, like, the way that paid tutoring helps you on your grades.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's all unspoken, though. And, like, even though it definitely is a rule of the school, like, it's not written down anywhere. And it is not active discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
It is just, like, cost prohibitive and, like, it definitely could be called discriminatory.
Right.
But, like, it isn't, like, legitimately, like, we are not allowing you to go to this luncheon because you don't board here.
Right.
And I might cut this, but remind me how we know that August isn't just lying about.
I don't think we do.
I mean, I think the thing was,
they do have to like set up a table for them.
Yeah, like I talked myself that, and that's part of how I talk myself out of thinking that was the case, because I had the thought where I was like, huh, but like I think I found a middle ground that makes sense to me as a headcanon.
Okay, let's have it.
Which is that my guess is that because like August is the first person to tell Simon and Sarah that non-boarders don't eat at the luncheon.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me think, my guess is that them being the only non-boarders currently at the school means that it might be more of an obscure or outdated rule that not everyone's aware of.
Mm-hmm.
That only August, as prefect and like student organizer of the event, knows about and can enforce, and then therefore leverage to get Simon to get off his back about money. Because I want to say, if anyone else did know, that's messed up because August shouldn't have been the first one to tell them.
Right. It should have been like the headmistress or something.
Yeah. It should have been the headmistress. That's messed up. Like, I don't, like, if you even, especially if you even, because like, this is why I'm like, was this just an in the moment thing for August? And like, we never find out. But, like, it's just, like, I don't know. Like, it's this moment where if all the prefix decisions have to be run by, like, any, like, higher-up powers, like, the fact that people, like, did just, like, let this go and kind of assumed, oh, it'll get to Simon and Sarah somehow, or, like, they'll assume they're not invited, or something.
Yeah.
Like, it just, at the very least, it's a enormous oversight that shows the ways in which Hilershka is not built for non-boarders. It allows non-boarders because legally it has to let them in, as we found out. Like, they can't discriminate that way. But, like, the systems in place are still very much not set up in Simon and Sarah's benefit.
Yeah.
Or even equitably, to give them to even the playing field. I don't know. Do you have any more thoughts on that, or you just second it, basically?
I think I just second it, actually, as a shocker to no one.
You're good. These episodes especially are the real ones where I just flex how much I thought for 4 years about stories and what they mean and how and what they're saying. I think the rest have I mean, obviously the luncheon is like really at the center of, I think, this class discussion, because it's like really where everything really comes together. And I think at least what I have left is like something that I think we talked about a lot, but like haven't really put in this new context. Like the luncheon really continues fleshing out Villa feeling uncomfortable in an environment that for all intents and purposes he should feel at home in, and basically rule as a prince of his country. Like he is really uncomfortable about going down to the luncheon, like probably more, like one can guess, because pretending to be someone else, as Erik suggests, is like what turns him off of going. Yeah. Like I know like Eric's is like, oh, just go down there and like pretend to be someone else. Like that's kind of the problem, Erik. And like the fact that like that is the blind spot that's happening is like does show that like even Erik has his limits for like how much he can understand Wilhelm, because like especially after like Wilhelm has gotten this much in trouble with their parents, like I think part of an undercurrent in the pilot is like, you've fucked up enough now that like I need to start playing hardball with you a little bit. Like I cannot in every moment like coddle and baby you into, and this is how I'm not saying this is how Erik Wilhelm actually is, but this is how I'm like perceiving Erik seeing the situation. Like I can't keep holding your hand through this, because you should have learned something by now. Yeah.
Which I think might be the most depressing part of these first 3 episodes, honestly, because it becomes very clear that Wilhelm is the closest to his brother and of anyone he's ever known.
Yeah.
And even his brother can't really understand him at this point.
Yeah. Like, especially for something that Erik can write off as something small, like just going to an event. Like that's just like another Tuesday. Yeah. For Erik. And so he's like, what is the problem here? Like, why don't you just do what our parents would expect you to do? And like, this is being very uncharitable to Erik, and this isn't really how it was intended or how I really feel, but like a way you could look at it is like, why are you making this more difficult than it has to be? Why are you making a big problem out of something that doesn't need to be a problem? I don't think Erik would ever say that. Right. But in his efforts to nudge Wilhelm towards something that he's clearly uncomfortable with, like, right. And then Erik finds a way to get Wilhelm to do what his parents would want them to do. Yeah. Like, he's like, oh, you have a person who, by my reading between the lines of what you're saying, which is not actually true, but like what he says, like, oh, you have someone you're sexually pursuing down there. Why don't you go down there? Pursue. Go pursue. Like, oh, if you have a friend's benefit situation down there, like why would you be talking up here, staying up here talking to your brother? Like, go do that. Like, yeah. Which like, genius, but also low blow. Like a little bit of a low blow. I don't know. And like, to be fair, we've said this before, Wilhelm actually does great at the luncheon. Like,
yeah, he does.
Like, he is not really awkward in the slightest. Like, he slights August, but no one is really like,
the only one who's paying attention to that is August and August's stepfather.
Exactly. Like, not even Louise seems all that fazed about it. She's like, eh.
She's like, I get it. My son's dick.
No. But like, it's like, oh, the prince wants him with us. Oh, what a shame. Like, it's a thing that like, I sometimes love and hate this sentiment, but like the idea that like those in power who like handle it with the most grace and responsibility are those who didn't want it in the first place. Who like don't really have the ambition to like hold on to power necessarily, or like value or crave it in a really unhealthy way. Like case in point, August. Like Wilhelm, he was born into privilege, but like a lot of times he sees it more often as a punishment. And that means that like he can be really self-conscious about how he uses his power, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's bad at using it.
Right.
Like, he knows how to use it. He just doesn't, like, in most circumstances, love using it. Like, it's not something he gets off on. Like, it's something that makes him uncomfortable a lot of the time, and like is like just like he's hopeful a lot of times that things can just like be normal, but like no one can ever be normal around the Prince of Sweden. Like,
right. Yeah.
Or they're your family and they treat you like you're doing something wrong, like always.
Right.
One last thing I would have to I thought to write down, also involving Parents' Day, was like, and there's like a lot here, but I think we covered a lot of it. Like Felice, Sarah, and like riding as a status symbol.
Yeah.
Just that like the fact that like whichever one of Felice's parents like asked this, like assumes, like has no real conception that a horse would be outside the price range of a like middle to lower middle class family. And that like this like just like miscommunication about like what these, and I guess this is almost a purple and orange thing, but like it's much more class based, so I wanted to bring it here. Like just like the fact that like the language of this sport, like you can both know the sport, but it can like be something different for both of them. I think in a very in a way that like is honestly, it's one of the ways that I think Sarah and Simon are most similar. In that is that like they're both seeking something more, but they differ in the way they want to go about getting that more.
Yeah.
At least in the approaches they've chosen thus far, because like Simon is like, I'm gonna get good grades, so I'm gonna keep going based on merit, and like not that Sarah isn't also doing that, but like socially, they've chosen completely different tacts.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's very clear that Sarah like loves riding, but I do wonder, other than the fact that like she's good at it, she loves horses, like all those things are probably pretty inborn things. Like, is any aspect of this the fact that riding is coded as a very rich activity? Like, does any part of the satisfaction of riding come from the fact that like, yeah, you
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
And
like, I guess unless there is like a legit prodigy, I'm assuming she has had riding experience prior to Hilershka, but like access to this sport, like the fact that like she has like unprecedented access to a horse to ride like pretty much every morning, like it's something she's immensely grateful for, but I think it's not lost on her that like that opportunity is because she has made a connection with a rich friend, or at least a rich classmate, because they weren't friends until recently, but like,
right,
yeah. And so there's definitely like maybe like more there, but like I think we've talked about a fair amount like what this horse means in this specific context. But with that, do you have any more that you have written that you don't have, didn't that we haven't touched on?
think so. I think we kind of covered it.
Yeah. For a second, we've been doing character episodes so often the past few times that I was almost like, or where's my big summary? I'm like, we don't have one. It's just this is just a collection of discussion thoughts. So I guess if we're done, then we can
I can take us out. Okay. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to keep up to date with when we release new episodes and other pod-related announcements, you can check out our Instagram at People Don't Talk About. Our next episode will be Purple and Orange, Season 1, Episode 3, so stay tuned. And with that, all that's left to say is...
Let's start a revolution, baby.